Back here on CBS Sports HQ, it's always fun to think back to the preseason and what the Heisman Trophy odds looked like. We were talking about Cade Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, Arch Manning, DJ Lagway was like a dark horse in there. And as we're entering week 7, it looks a whole lot different. Dante Moore sitting at the top of the odds at 5-1. Carson Beck, Ty Simpson, Jeremiah Smith, John Mateer, and then Fernando Mendoza is sitting there at 12-1 to win the Heisman Trophy as we were entering week 7 of college football. All right, back here on set, we have Mackenzie joining us, Chip Patterson. We're going to kind of go through some of these matchups entering week 7 and talk about the Heisman Trophy implications. We have a ranked unranked Big Ten matchup on CBS with a lot of Heisman Trophy implications here as we have Indiana taking on Oregon. A fun fact that I know you guys know, for Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza combining for 30 passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions this season, which is absolutely insane. Let's start with Dante Moore right now sitting at 5-1. So, Kenz, how much is on the line for him for this matchup? What is going on in terms of if he wins, if he loses? What does that mean for his Heisman Trophy odds here?
Yeah, typically at this point in the season and you're the head of the race, there's usually more to lose than there is to gain. Like, I'm not always here to tell you to take the guy with the shortest odds at this point in the season. But what I will say, if you are a Dante Moore truther, this is the time you want to get in on him. Odds makers implying around a 17% chance for him to take this home. We'd imply around a 16.5, very similar. He's on pace as far as the stats you want to be hitting here, but he does have a very favorable schedule after this game. So again, if you are in on Dante Moore, I would get it before he hypothetically beats this Indiana team and then continues to stat pad his way through the rest of this regular season.
Yeah, Kens, I've been thinking about your stat benchmarks and that in some of these games that they are facing later in the season, I don't know if he's going to be able to get that. So in a game against Indiana that we do think can be competitive, and if you, like me, think that Indiana is going to be able to score here as well, Dante Moore, more to lose, yes, but a lot to gain in terms of putting up those eye-popping numbers. Because while Indiana's secondary is supposed to have D'Angelo Pons back, that is their best cornerback, I do wonder if they're going to be able to guard Corian Moore and the rest of these Oregon wide receivers. So for Dante Moore, it's a very different opponent and a very different defense than what they had in terms of playing Penn State on the road. You are at home and you're against an Indiana pass defense that they might be able to pick apart. So yes, you obviously want to get the win to avoid the loss, but there might be an opportunity in a high scoring competitive game to put up some silly numbers, which will get everyone's attention, but also help your season end totals.
All right, let's go to the quarterback on the other side of this matchup and Fernando Mendoza. So if we're kind of looking at him, I know we were talking about Dante Moore and his implications. Chip, I'll come to you first here. He's sitting at 12-1 to win the Heisman. So how much does he have to lose in terms of this, or is he kind of playing more with house money in your eyes?
I do see it as a house money situation. I like the way that you put that because to me, a win, it gives him the grace to be able to go the rest of the season and even have a clunker or two. Because remember, for Indiana, the work would not be done if you are able to go into Autzen and if you are able to pull off the upset. This is still a team that has a couple games left, which could get just a little bit hairy. And so for Fernando Mendoza, the idea that you could play well against a team that we widely recognize as in the debate for #1 team in the country, that would just be more checks along the expectations. Plus, for Fernando Mendoza, he's kind of repping for all of Indiana football. This Indiana football program's performance against lesser competition versus the elite has kind of been the narrative that is going to be hanging in the balance. If Mendoza can push them over the hump on that too, then that's going to have a lot of extra push in terms of winning over Heisman voters.
Yeah, it's always the mix of the stats and then the storylines, right? The whole team storylines. Now, he kind of inherited last season's, can this team beat good teams? Can they do it on the road? So he does have to battle that. I don't necessarily have them winning this game. I'm not so high on him specifically, not really to do with the stats or anything or that pace, but now you're really head-to-head with Moore, which in my eyes means you have to beat Penn State, because why would we crown you the Heisman if somebody else already beat Penn State? So honestly, it really comes down to winning this game and then beating Penn State, because you're literally head-to-head competing with Moore here. That's not the situation for every team, every quarterback in the Heisman race right now, but I just feel like a lot of the odds are stacked against him, not someone I'd recommend betting on.
Okay, yeah, and I don't want to alarm Browns fans, but our very own Mike Renner in his latest mock draft does have Fernando Mendoza going #1 overall.
Shortest odds on FanDuel.
To the Cleveland Browns. So you might have yet another quarterback that you got to keep up with and add to that like forsaken jersey that we've seen go viral every so often. All right, let's go to Ty Simpson. He's at plus 750 here. So If he can hit the road and take on yet another ranked SEC team, Ken's in Mizzou, what does that do for him in terms of the Heisman race?
His odds will be cut in half. This is a very much buy-in on Ty Simpson. Now, I did say to buy in on Ty Simpson at 25-1 for those keeping track at home, but I will say buy in again. If you didn't already, get in on him because look at. He's not a guy that was expected to do so much going into the season. I think you see, preseason expectations always play a role in this. Even think back to Caleb Williams. Like, we thought so highly of him that anything he did, he would never exceed the expectations. This is a guy who has the luxury of, we didn't really know what we were going to get from Alabama this year. You look at their win total, too. He's competing with a guy like Carson Beck, where we're assuming he is going to win the ACC championship, assuming he is going to win out. Ty Simpson has the luxury of not having to do that because he has such a hard schedule. So not only does he have so many big games under bright lights, that obviously is helpful and that can help your odds if you put on a good show, but he doesn't have this pressure of necessarily winning out here and winning the SEC championship because there's enough strength of schedule helping him that on top of the fact he's putting up the great stats and playing like one of the best quarterbacks, he doesn't have this crazy pressure around him.
I think that Ty Simpson is really one of the great stories in all of college football. You mentioned the big stages. This gauntlet is incredible, just what Alabama's going through. And even within that, the game within the game, so to speak, many of these teams have off weeks or at least play lesser competition the week before playing Alabama. So they're facing everybody in the conference who's good, and all of those teams, like Missouri this week, had an extra week to prepare. Let Ty Simpson get through this gauntlet and be in the mix for the SEC title. Ty Simpson will be in the mix for the Heisman Trophy. But the reason why I say story, because Ken's was talking about lining up the storylines with the stats, he has stayed at Alabama in this era where five-star quarterbacks never stay put. He competed for the job. He didn't get it. He competed again. He didn't get it. And now that his number is called, he is ready to lead this team to an SEC title. Like, that is a throwback storyline that the Heisman voters, I think, would really latch on to.
Yeah, and just to put it in perspective from a numbers standpoint, like plus 750 is implying around an 11% chance to win. We would make it closer to 15%, which sounds silly, but that's a difference of plus 750 to where we would set it around plus 600. So getting that plus 750 right now is certainly value before this game.
And I kind of like to your point, Chip, too, is like sticking in one spot and waiting out your turn could be something that Heisman voters,
they eat it up, Jacqueline.
Gravitate
they
towards,
eat up the story.
especially in this like NIL era that we're living in college sports. Finally, want to talk about John Mateer because he has been upgraded to probable for the Red River rivalry game. It was questionable. We didn't really know what was going on. Obviously, he had hand surgery on his throwing hand. So, Chip, originally I was going to ask, like, hey, if he doesn't play, is he completely out? But if he does play and doesn't really have a great game, are there any other opportunities down the line, or does he really have to show out and have a Heisman moment in this game in order for him to kind of rise up the boards in your eyes?
No, like Ty Simpson, there will be opportunities, including Oklahoma and Alabama playing each other a little bit later on this season. So for John Mateer, the thing that's so interesting about this matchup is that, okay, if he's back, that's a little bit early based on the timetable. And shout out to Dr. Shin, one of the most unique characters in the 2025 college football storyline. I think that if John Mateer is at any risk at all of damaging that throwing hand more, I don't know if I would put him out there, because for John Mateer in the Heisman Trophy, if he doesn't play, then it doesn't hurt his Heisman chances. For Oklahoma and their college football playoff consideration, if he doesn't play, the committee will look at whatever the result is a little bit differently, taking his absence into consideration. Now, if Mateer does come back early ahead of schedule, and if he plays well, he doesn't even need to put up crazy stats. If it's similar to the situation where he's just running in the game-winning touchdown, then all of a sudden we'd be talking about John Mateer in a whole new light. So yeah, from the Heisman standpoint, I really don't think there's anything that could negatively come out of this. But man, if he does play, and if he leads the Sooners to a win and is the reason for the win, well, then now we're going to be talking about a big-time front runner on the board.
I love John Mateer. I've been talking about this guy since July, and we were really looking like we were going to bring this home. Unfortunately, I think missing that Kent State game was such a prime stat padding opportunity. Like, that's 4 to 5 touchdowns that we thought you were going to have that you now have to make up for. Only way to make up for touchdowns like that is be able to play more games, like maybe in the SEC championship. So I see his chance of winning the Heisman now more directly correlated to making it further in the season to make up for what he missed. Obviously, the storyline would certainly be there if he's putting up great numbers and plays and Oklahoma starts winning some of these marquee matchups. but it's just a really hard spot to put yourself when you're so behind in stats. And if this was a season where we're talking about 3 to 4 guys, maybe I would like him, but we're talking about like 15 different Heisman candidates still in week 7. I mean, literally every week a new guy pops up on the board. His odds went from 25 to 1 to 10 to 1 with the news of him being probable. I think that was a little over dramatic here. I don't think 10 to 1 is very good value.
Yeah, I do think it's really important. I love that Mackenzie brings this up. We say you're at the top of the board, but these implied odds are like 15, 10, 12, 15%. So this is a time in this particular Heisman race. We don't always have it, but in this one, this thing is still wide open.
Yeah, I was going to say, I literally feel like week to week, we have like
the field.
We have a new person that comes up that we're talking about. Chip, Kenz, we certainly appreciate it, walking us through the ever-changing Heisman Trophy odds as we were heading into week 7 of college football. You can hear more from Chip on the Cover 3 podcast. You can download, follow, listen wherever you find your favorite pods. They have week 7 locks that are in your feed right now. You can watch by scanning that QR code on your screen.